All right, just a quick overview of the workout. Going to be focused on hamstrings and lower body, but particularly hamstrings. Going to be doing some double leg RDLs supersetted with some Bulgarian split squats, some single leg RDLs, some walking lunges going forward, walking lunges going backward, as well as squat walks. And then we're going to finish off with some leg curls. But without further ado, the real reason we all came here is the top 5 animated movies of all time, Japanese animation in particular. All right, top of the list, I have to start it off with Akira, which, in my opinion, is by far probably the best animated movie ever made, without exceptions. It's credited for ushering in a lot of the popular animation to the West: Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, Ghost in the Shell, Alita Battle Angel, Cowboy Bebop. It even it really influenced a lot of the more secular forms of pop culture, like the Star Wars franchise, Michael Jackson, Lupe Fiasco, Kanye West, Steven Spielberg, uh, even James Cameron. Many people attribute it to being the vector in which the West was able to really capitalize on the end of that anime golden age in the 80s. Before Akira, the adult anime was more of a subgenre. It hadn't quite burst onto the scene in the popularity that you see now. Like, you rarely saw animes that were being marketed towards adults. This film that was released in the late 80s is set in a time of 2019, Neo Tokyo, about 30 years after a nuclear explosion. And you really get to see the rot and the festering that the nuclear explosion from decades earlier has left in Neo Tokyo. And you follow Kaneda and Tetsuo through kind of their journey of starting a gang and trying to navigate their way through this hectic world, and having nothing but essentially each other and eventually themselves to rely on. And just like our superset in our workout, we're going to superset Akira with Ghost in the Shell. Ghost in the Shell is arguably as influential as Akira. Some would say more influential. I disagree. It really was ahead of its time, piggybacking on the curtails of authors like Philip K. Dick and their simulated reality.
What's a simulated experience again?
All your memories about your wife and daughter are false. They're like a dream. Someone's taken advantage of you. They were trying to make you ghost hack into some government officials.
As you can pretty well see from the title, Ghost in the Shell, it is paying homage to Rene Descartes' phrase, the dogma of the ghost and the machine, just exploring the ideal of dualism and the relationship between your body and your mind. Unlike Akira, which brings a lot of stories together into one sequence, Ghost in the Shell is hyper-focused on one person's perspective of the world around them. Motoku Kusanagi is the focused character known as Major throughout the film. And this is set in 2029 Tokyo, I believe. And it's just a beautiful hellscape of sorts of what the world could become and may very soon become. I do think it does hit home, particularly with the conversation of identity and what does that mean, and how is that connected to being alive. It really pushed past a conversation that wasn't being had as openly in the early 90s as it's happened today. And I think it's a really good film to circle back to often and relook at as we move closer to that future. Obviously, not in well, who knows? The metaverse is coming. And next up on our journey, we'll be visiting a lesser known relative to Akira and Ghost in the Shell, a lesser known animated movie called Ninja Scroll. And this came out in the mid-90s. It was super popular here in the West, not so popular in Japan, but is a beautiful look into the Edo period of Japan and a deep dive into shinobi culture, which is ninja culture. It is, not to borrow from Kanye West, but a dark, twisted, and beautiful fantasy. It really embodies a lot of the aspects, the grimmer aspects of the shinobi lifestyle. This follows two shinobis as they battle against 8 devil shinobis. And wow, if you are into beautifully violent animes, this one is a must-see. I highly recommend it. You would be doing yourself a disservice to do otherwise. And Princess Mononoke, this one came out in 1997, but the setting for the story is in the 14th century Japan. The central theme of this movie, of which all the other themes kind of stem from, is man versus nature, more or less. It is the industrialization versus living with nature. And it's embodied through two of the three main characters, should I say. But Ashitaka, the last prince of the Amishi people, which are people who are more in touch with nature and use it to aid them, as opposed to Lady Iboshi, who represents the industrialization. She's the pretty much the monarch, more or less, of Irontown, and she is the one who is destroying the forest and the earth to make guns and sell iron. And in between these two is Princess Mononoke, the namesake of the movie. And she is kind of an interesting mix of the two. She was a human who was dropped off in the forest, well, abandoned in the forest by her parents and raised by wolves. And so she has quite the affinity for nature and respecting its place and purpose. And she's conflicted throughout the movie at wanting to appeal more to her human side, or realizing that she is a human, even though she was raised by wolves. She eventually, towards the end, begins to realize that she can't be on both sides, and she does have to willingly go with the flow. For the most part, the other animals don't see her as one of them. They see her as more of a threat. And she's caught between having to save a human who helped her earlier, and giving him up to the other animal gods. And that is my favorite out of the Ghibli studios. But this next one also is from Ghibli Studios and by the same maker. And the final one on this list, there is probably the most notable, at least critically acclaimed here in the West. It's going to be Spirited Away, another Miyazaki film, and this one got an Oscar. It is a really nice tale of coming of age, and it's told from the perspective of a 10-year-old girl. This child is plunged into looking out for herself after her parents get transformed into pigs, and has to conquer these insurmountable obstacles through sheer determination and grit. And she's a 10-year-old girl, so she doesn't really know anything. She's kind of winging it and learning as she goes. But by the end of this, she finds her way to becoming quite a mature 10-year-old. And by the time she leaves the spirit world and goes back to the regular world, she has a new understanding on life, and she's willing to move forward with her family to the next chapter of their life. These are my top 5 animated movies of all time. If you disagree, it's because you're wrong. Anyways, let me know in the comments.